you. It's great being here in Italy with you all. I'm looking forward to getting to hear your story and sharing Jesus with you. Even from the time at dinner, it's been wonderful just to be around brothers and sisters from around the world. There is a unique delight that my wife and I have whenever we get to spend time with the Hollands as well. We got to know Elena when she was 17.
I was probably 19 by the time.
You were 19.
Yeah.
So she was still a teenager.
Yes.
Elena is a teenager.
Yeah.
And I don't know if because what happened was, in our church we collected college students and associated them with certain families. And so Elena was going to come to our house for dinner.
Yes.
And she couldn't find it and contacted us. And you stopped at a school. Do you remember which one?
It was a Pope.
Pope Elementary.
Yeah.
And I still found you under the shadow of the Pope.
Wow.
See that? That's the level of humor you're going to get all weekend. It's not going to get any better. I'm a South African. And I'm going to be reading to you from 1 Peter, and that's where we're going to be this weekend. The first letter of Peter. And when we are in 1 Peter, we're going to find there are certain passages where we're just going to touch the tops of the waves, and there's some that we're going to dive deep beneath, because we're going to get through all of it just in this one weekend. But it starts, chapter 1, verse 1. Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ, to those who are elect exiles of the dispersion in Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia, according to the foreknowledge of God the Father, in the sanctification of the Spirit, for obedience to Jesus Christ and for sprinkling with his blood, may grace and peace be multiplied to you. Now this is a very typical introduction. Talks about who he's talking to, and then he has some deep theology. Now, most people that I know, when they read these first few verses, they get really interested in who exactly are the elect. What does it mean to be elect? What's the theology surrounding election? What does sanctification look like? How do people become holy? These are the questions that most people ask. But I have a sneaking suspicion that when we read this, there is a certain amount of solidarity that we feel with the places like Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. Because what Peter is doing is he's writing to those who are scattered. He's writing to Christians who are scattered around the world. None of these people he's writing to are where they are from. They're in a place that's alien to them. They're in a different and a strange place. And all of us have that experience. I can say all of us because, true, I'm in Italy now, but I'm a South African in Tennessee. I'm a South African in Tennessee. And so this was my experience, and I'll share it tomorrow again because I know we'll have some other people. But I was born in Kentucky, Louisville. And my dad was studying in seminary when I was born. And so I was sort of an anchor baby. I was unexpected. And I show up. 10 months later, the whole family goes back to South Africa. My dad was there studying. So I'm an American citizen by birth, but I was raised in South Africa. So my culture, my accent, my worldview is all South African. In 1997, which is a while back, my wife and I, of 2 years, went back to the United States, back to Louisville, Kentucky, where I did my seminary studies. So I was a school teacher, went to seminary. And after that, I went to Little Rock for 1 year. And then from there, we went to Tennessee, and we've been there. We planted a church, and it's still at the same church 23 years later. This Sunday, just a few days ago, I finished preaching, and I'm walking out to talk to people, and they're guests, and I walk up to a woman, and I told a story. It's a great story of my grandfather in Africa, and she said, "Thank you so much for telling me that you were from South Africa. It saved me from having to guess from your accent." And then she said, "Welcome to America." Thank you.
I've been waiting for someone to say.
So, welcome to America. I've been here for 28 years now, and I was born here. But it's not her fault, right? I mean, what she was doing was hospitable. From her perspective, I'm an exile. I've made my home somewhere far from my origin. And you, each one, can tell a similar story where someone has made an assumption about who you are based on where you're from. And depending on how healthy you feel at the moment, it can be funny or it can hurt. Because we're not quite sure who we are. So I'm going to pray, I'm going to read this again, and then we're going to look at it. Lord, thank you for my time here with brothers and sisters. And I look forward to getting to know you. And I thank you for your word, written to exiles, those chosen and scattered. And I pray that as we spend time in this letter of the Apostle Peter, we'll be super encouraged as we find our own name. So be here. Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ, to those who are elect exiles of the dispersion, scattering, in Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, Bithynia, according to the foreknowledge of God the Father, in the sanctification of the Spirit, for obedience to Jesus Christ and for sprinkling with his blood. May grace and peace be multiplied to you. That will be my hope for you this weekend. Grace and peace is multiplied to you. He keeps on. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, according to his great mercy. He has caused us to be born again to a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an inheritance that is imperishable, undefiled, unfading, kept in heaven for you, who by God's power are being guarded through faith for salvation, ready to be revealed in the last time. And in this you rejoice. In this you rejoice. Here is this wonderful passage about where our living hope is. That's his life. We have been, right, saved to this living hope that we get to rejoice in. And we are saved into this by his great mercy, his great love. This is the glory of who God is. God is altogether righteous, he's altogether pure, he's altogether perfect. There is nothing about him that is not holy. And there is no way we could stand in his presence but God in his great love. Love us not because we're lovable, but because he's loving. So he loves us not because he's responding to something in us, but he's expressing something in him. He loves us because he wants to. That's who he is. And he loves us enough to send Jesus Christ to die on our behalf, so that he becomes the exchange, the substitute. He dies in our stead. And this amazing transaction takes place where my sin, as grotesque as it is, gathered with your sin, gets exchanged and put with him on the cross. And he becomes sin for us, that we might become righteousness of God. So it's not just that I get a zero balance in my moral account, all my sin is removed and I'm brought back to zero balance. No, I become the righteousness of God. All the things that Christ has accumulated transfer to my account. Now, at this point, I'm not going to talk about me anymore. I'm going to talk about someone else who's far, far more interesting. He's so interesting, I'm doing my PhD studies on him. His name is Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Anybody know who Dietrich Bonhoeffer is? Give me a hand. I'm sleepy, you should go. Okay. Alright, so for those of you who don't know, Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a German. And he's dead, has been dead for a long time. He was a German theologian from an aristocratic family, very German Prussian family. His father was a famous psychologist, sort of feuded with Freud in that whole area, well-to-do, connected with important people, and Dietrich Bonhoeffer decided that he wanted to be a theologian, and his family was horribly disappointed because they were powerful people, they were sophisticated people, and theology was kind of an odd choice back then. But he decided he was going to be a good theologian. He came to the States once he finished his studies, and while he was in the States for 1 year doing further education at Union Seminary, he did his worship in Harlem, and he was in an African American church, and for the first time he saw what true worship was. So what we just experienced, he'd never tasted that. And was in experiencing genuine worship, he was radically saved, he was transformed. And this brilliant mind started writing amazing theology. Amazing theology, and the part that I'm studying is his joy. And his joy was significant for two reasons. For example, I could bring Boz, you'll meet Boz, right? He's our middle school pastor. Boz is an upbeat, fun guy. He's going to find laughter, it's going to be fun. If he wants to talk to you about happiness, it's like, that just comes out of you naturally. What help is that to me? That's your personality. Bonhoeffer was not that guy. He was stiff. He was everything you describe when you think of Germans. Any Germans in the room? my family is German. But he was the epitome of that, right? So he was very rigid. And not only was he rigid, he was naturally a depressed kind of guy. So melancholy was his experience. He was sad. Brilliant, well-connected, affluent, and sad. And yet, right, when he was in Buchenwald, I should tell you when he was. This is during World War II. He actually was part of the conspiracy against Hitler. And when they found out that he was part of that conspiracy, he was arrested. And ultimately, he was executed as Hitler's last order before Hitler committed suicide. So he was part of the conspiracy against Hitler in Germany. That's why he went to prison. He was in prison for over 2-3 years, and then 2 weeks before the end of the war, he was hung. He was executed. While he was in Buchenwald, a man by the name of Payne West, he was an Englishman, he was an intelligence officer, he'd been caught early in the war, and he was in the same corridor as Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And when he wrote his memoirs after the war, he said that Dietrich Bonhoeffer was the gladdest person he'd ever met. That's an odd thing to say. He met someone in Buchenwald who was the gladdest person he had ever met. There's a man who was melancholy by personality and was in a Nazi concentration camp and was happy. So how is that possible? That's exactly why I'm studying. Because if he can be happy, then you can be happy. And then this verse, in this you rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, you have been grieved. It's not as though ignore your grief, it's not real, pretend everything's hunky-dory. No. I love the Bible because it's so real. Even though you have been grieved, you rejoice. Now, a lot of that has to do with identity. And so, over the next few sessions, we're going to talk about who we are, how do we identify ourselves, and where does joy come in for that. But I want to read you a poem, and this will be it for tonight. And I'm really excited about spending the next few days with you as we consider what it looks like to find who we are, where we are, and how we rejoice in that. And we rejoice in it. And so Bonhoeffer wrote this poem while he was in prison. There was a kind God who valued him and would actually smuggle his writings out of prison. And appropriately, this poem is called Who Am I? And he says, who am I? They often tell me. I step out from my cell, calm, cheerful, and poised, like a squire from his manor. Who am I? They often tell me I speak with my guards freely, friendly, and clear, as though I were the one in charge. Who am I? They also tell me I bear days of calamity, serenely smiling and proud, like one accustomed to victory. Am I really what others say of me? Or am I only what I know of myself? Restless, yearning, sick like a caged bird, struggling for life breath as though I were being strangled, starving for colors, for flowers, for birdsong, thirsting for kind words, human closeness, shaking with rage at power lust and piteous insult, tossed about, waiting for great things to happen, helplessly fearing for friends so far away, too tired and empty to pray, to think, to work, weary and ready to take leave of it all. Who am I? This one or the other? Am I this one today and tomorrow another? Am I both at once, before others a hypocrite, and in my own eyes a pitiful, whimpering, weeping? Or is what remains in me like a defeated army, fleeing in disarray from victory already won? Who am I? They mock me, these lonely questions of mine. Here's the key line. Whoever I am, thou knowest me, O God, I am thine. That's the key line. Who am I? Am I this person who's got it together? Am I that person who's falling apart? Am I this person who is victorious? Or am I that person who is crushed by doubt? And we walk through these questions without ever really having a firm grasp until we get to this last truth. Whoever I am, thou knowest me, I am thine. The key thing that I want you to get this weekend is not a clear idea of who you are. What I want you to have is a clear conviction that God knows who you are. That's it. That's good for a start. I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to answer questions because I'm a teacher. Lord, thank you so much for allowing us to be in this beautiful place with beautiful people. And I thank you for legacy of faith that's represented here, and even way beyond us for people we don't know. And I just pray that what we do here will matter. Not just because we'll have questions answered, that you will do a wonderful work in us, changing us thoroughly for your glory. Amen. All right. So because we've got a small group, and I'm going to teach and preach, and I'm going to kind of move in between those. If you have a question, I'd like to know something about what you just said, let's talk about it. I'm really okay with that. The key key issue for us is encounter with each other, encounter with food. So anything that you've heard today so far that you said, Eugene, I'd like to hear more of this over the weekend, or could you clarify? Or what was that strange word you used? Because I like words and I might use something we don't familiar with.
How far back is it from German? Because you said you're South African and then you said you're German.
Okay, so you know, when you think about identity from origin, we'll get into that. My family is one part German, so my father is from German, and strangely enough, in the previous Crimean War, when England was fighting, they recruited German soldiers, and the Germans were in England getting trained to be sent to the Crimea. And the war ended, and they didn't know what to do with them, so they shipped them down to one of their colonies. So there's this whole German enclave in South Africa. So that's one side of the German family. I'm the only generation that doesn't speak German. So my father and so on up there, they spoke German. And my mother's side of the family is Scottish. She's a MacDonald. And so I've got Scots, German, born in Kentucky, raised in South Africa, living in Tennessee, married to a girl who is French Huguenot, South African with some Norwegian. So it's just a mix, right? and so many of you have that story. So like, and if you don't, your kids now do. You know? And so, yeah. In South Africa, when you look at a dog that doesn't have pure breeding, we call them a dog. And that's pretty much me. But I'm a dog that is elect and called a dog.
Okay.
So what is the transformation story though? So once was it when he went to worship, or was it something else that happened that he actually changed?
No, for him, for Bonhoeffer, so he so much I could tell. Or quickly, in Germany at the time was very liberal theology. And by liberal theology, we mustn't think liberal politics. Okay, it's not that. Liberal theology denies the supernatural. And so tries to reduce faith to science. And so that's what he was raised in, and he rebelled against it. He didn't think that the biblical stories were myth. He thought they were real. So he had this intellectual conviction that there is more to this than just myth. But he'd never seen people engage with it in a way that was real. And it's like so many people, his conversion was gradual. There was this intellectual awareness. But when he was in the worship service in Harlem, something changed. And it wasn't instant. He was there for a year. But when he came back to Germany, people suddenly realized that he was different. His preaching had changed. His praying had changed. He spent more time in God's Word. And previously, he was a theologian because it was a career option. Now, he was a man of the church because he believed. Really a fascinating study. Yeah.
Why do you have so much joy?
Why does he have so much joy? There's two principles, and they flow through all his theology. That's his Christology, his understanding of Christ. And so the first word is contemporaneity, which basically means that he's contemporary. Christ is with us. Now we say that Christ is with us, but no, he's really with us. You know? So the space you're in, by his with you. So Christ is near. This is fundamental to God. He's going to beat this drum. Christ is near. He's with you all the time. And the second thing, and this I love this, is a theological word. You can use it to make yourself sound so clever. It's promeity. Right? It's a genuine theological word. You know what it means? It means that God is pro me. Promeity is simply, and I'm serious, it's a theological word, but it means that God is pro me. He's for me. Pro me, iti. Promeity. He is pro me. I want you to get that. Jesus is for you. He's on your side. He's for you. Now, if you have one of those, it's not enough. If Jesus is near, but he's not for you, that's not great. If Jesus is for you, but he's far away, not so good. But since he is for you and he is near you, there is your delight, and we delight in Christ. And in every circumstance, we're going to revel in him. So in a couple of sessions, we're going to talk about who we are in the world. And Bonhoeffer was fascinated with being in the world. That he was a worldly theologian because Christ is in the world with us. And Christ has validated the world by being incarnate. So he is validated. So the world is, he's in a Nazi prison. It's bad, right? And so he'll talk, he'll write to his dad and say, I took joy today in the bird song that I heard. And I took joy in the ants busy in the courtyard. The only thing I can't take joy in is in the flies of myself. That's the one thing you couldn't get to. But he looked at the world he put us in, and he said, Christ is with me, and he sees Christ's ministry to us in the simple things. And so it became exceedingly practical, and that's where his joy came.
So that in the poem, when he's the dilemma in the back and forth, he's recognizing the tension. So it's okay to recognize the tension,
Yeah.
but the reminding that Christ is here and is for me.
Yeah. And if you think about the Psalms, isn't that the pattern of the laments? So when David is writing the laments, and he's beating his chest, and he's grieved, and then concludes with, and praise and confidence in God. It's not like God doesn't know how you do it. You don't put a saccharine smile on your face and sort of a pretend joy. There is a joy even in sorrow, because it is in our sorrow we are in the arena of Christ. If Christ is for us, we are near us. We're most near him in our suffering because he suffered with us. And he suffered for us. So anything that draws us closer to Christ is the source of joy.
My question is, did he say anything about how he felt about the execution since he was in a peace prison, but he knew he was getting executed? How did he feel?
Oh, yeah. Like this, kind of backwards and forwards, but his last words, as he was being led off to execution, was, this is the end for me, the beginning of life. So he recognized that he was going to die, but he had this confidence in an unfading inheritance. It's imperishable, undefiled, and kept in heaven. And so he knew that they can do their worst, but still. But what I love about just studying him and other great people of the faith is they're real, right? So there's moments where they're victorious and there's moments when they're weak. But who we are is not defined by us moving, but the fact that Christ doesn't. That's the key piece. We have to go like, okay, I am weak, I'm vacillating, but Christ is not. And that's where the joy is.
you have small children that say, well, I think I'd rather have my kids go to sleep, no one will think less of you. Totally fine. But we're going to do that tonight. There will be some s'more action. You know what a s'more is? All the sugar and graham crackers and chocolate. It's a good thing.
There's joy.
I do want to point out in your booklets, this is particularly for you adults, but also adults who brought your families. We have these personal reflection deals in here that were written by your elders, as well as somebody else contributed to this, but they're not autographed or anything. The point is that they're guided quiet times. Also, looking at 1 Peter. And so, when you get up in the morning, this is a suggestive thing to think through, pray through, read through, and look at 1 Peter. This weekend, we hope you take advantage of the moments where there's free time, quiet time, to be with the Lord. There is no better way to rest this weekend than to take time in the Word. Do this personally. If you came with your family, maybe take a moment and have time as a family to ask some of the questions in here. At the end of each session, maybe you saw at the bottom of your notes, there's a question or two to further reflect. If that's all you do, that's okay. But please take advantage of this opportunity to say, hey, we've been praying, we've been writing, thinking, preparing for your joy in the Lord, your time with Him. So this is a wonderful time to take advantage of that. The thing you shouldn't do is say, now that I have this book, I can take it home and I'll do it later. Because I know me, and you won't do it later. Because I'll move on to the next thing. This is the time to be with the Lord. So, it is 9:15. There's probably a raging fire going on outside. We can go ahead and head out there. Okay? And the kids, I think, will go to the...
Do we pick them up or?
Let's go pick them up.
Let's go pick them up. Let's pick up our children.
Yeah. They're all
They're probably
around
gonna
the
put
fire.
real. They're all around the fire. Oh,
And the other part is giving credit for the resources he used.
Yeah. No,
But
I've
that's
not
what-
read
That's one of
enough
the
of
first
this.
books I